Hi, everybody. Pam here from Around the Table Yarns, and welcome to our final class for the Moon of Cardi by Toni Lipsey. So today I want to show you a couple of things. I want to talk to you a little bit about blocking your pieces and seaming your pieces, putting it all together. Um, we had a great class in person this morning and got some good tips. So I just want to make sure I pass those on to our online followers. So I want to show you here. Let me move this one down. So here is the body of my cardigan. This side I have blocked, and this side I have not. So if you are not sold 100% on what blocking can do for your work, let me tell you what blocking can do for your work. It just smooths everything out. Everything lays flat. Any of the seaming where we had picked up stitches for our collar band. On this side, it's a little rough. It's a little bumpy. Now it lays very smooth and flat. All the stitches it looks like it's been professionally ironed, which is wonderful, but it's got great drape. Again, I'm using the Secret Garden from Shapejust, which is a silk cotton blend. So it really feels wonderful. Like I'm really excited to wear this. Um, I would say I was going to wet block half of it, and then I decided to try a steam block first, and that's what I did. Which gave, I think, just the right amount for what I needed. I want my edges to be nice and flat for when I seam it together. And I want to make sure that I'm getting a really good fit before I start to put everything together. So to steam block, you don't need anything in particular. If you've got an iron, you're good to go. You can use a steamer if you want to. All I did was use a regular iron, and I got a cotton dish towel, got it really, really wet, wrung out the water, laid this on my ironing board and put the wet dish towel over it, and then hovered my steam iron over, which when you hover it over the wet dish towel, it creates more steam. And I did that a couple of times, lifted the dishcloth to make sure I didn't have any wrinkles caught in it, did some hand smoothing. Um, I did a little bit of straightening along the edge just to make my edge nice and straight, and went back and did it again. The nice thing about a steam block is that it doesn't take very long and it dries pretty quick. So I was able to do this last night, and I probably could have even folded it up last night and brought it in. But this morning it was perfectly dry, ready to go. And even, it holds its shape pretty well. Um, it really did a nice job. So I wanted to show you the main piece. And then I also didn't get quite as far this month as I had hoped. I did most of a sleeve, and I have blocked half of it right here. I'll have to go back and finish my sleeve, but I've blocked this half so you can really see the difference in how those stitches appear, and how, especially around the edges, how nice it lays flat, smooths everything out. Um, it just looks really nicely done. It will also make, when your edges are nice and flat and uniform, much easier to seam together. Okay. So I think that's all I had to share with you about blocking. You absolutely could get it completely wet and smooth the whole thing out, but I don't know that that's completely necessary for putting it together. I 100% think that you should block all your pieces before you put them together. I have not quite decided if I'm going to put a pocket on. I'm going to demonstrate how to seam on a pocket with my little patch swatch, but I want everything to be put together first. And I recommend you do the pockets very last, so that if you do decide you want a pocket, you can put it exactly where you want it based on how the cardigan fits on you. Okay? That's just my little tip to you. All right. So let's talk about seaming. I'm going to switch over to my camera here. So we're going to do a mattress stitch. And this is, I love mattress stitch. I think it is a wonderful way to piece knitting, crochet, a little harder in regular crochet, but I wasn't sure how it was going to work on the Tunisian crochet. And I have to say that I think Tunisian was meant for mattress stitch. If you've mattress stitched knitting before, you'll know that it is a way of putting two pieces of fabric together that should, if done correctly, provide an invisible seam that gets pulled to the wrong side of the work. So what I'm going to do here is talk to you about, and stop sharing that for just a sec. I'm going to talk to you about how we're going to attach, and I feel like this is the order you should seam things together. How you're going to attach your sleeve to the body of your sweater. All right, so we had on the shoulders of our sweater, Toni had us put markers on the end, and of course the one on the side I blocked fell off. So I'm going to guesstimate where it is. But what that mark showed was the very top of the shoulder. And she does tell you in the instructions to leave that marker in. I really thought I had, but apparently it has disappeared. So I'm going to very quickly stick one in here. To represent my shoulder. Okay. So I've got my, right here is going to be the center of my shoulder where my shoulder where my marker is. Now for your sleeve, don't really have a center marked. And I'm going to show you the very scientific way. We're going to fold it in half, getting those side edges really together. Unroll it, don't stretch it, but just kind of bring it together and find the middle of the top and put a marker there. You could measure across and find the exact center, but ultimately a stitch or so, a millimeter or so isn't going to make a huge difference. But if you feel better having something exact, absolutely measure across, find your dead center, and put a marker. So now it's a matter of matching the marker to the marker. So now I'm going to switch over to the camera. And see how we put this all together. Here we go. Okay. So here is the body of, here's my collar going around the back. And here's my marker telling me where the top of my shoulder is. And this should be where we started going across to the front. Okay. And here, let's move this a little more center. There we go. And here is the center of my sleeve. Okay. So I want these two pieces, these two center points to match up. So it was right there. So I'm just going to link them together right there. Okay. When you've got a long run of something that needs to be, even if you've got a relatively short run, when you've got a long run of fabric that needs to be mattress stitched, you really should piece it together with some stitch markers. In the absence of stitch markers, you could certainly use safety pins or those coilless pins. We carry those in the shop. I've even on a hard pressed day done with some darning needles. You could use straight pins. I know a lot of people use straight pins, but what you want to do is you want an even fabric here and an even fabric here and have them butt up together. What I don't want is for extra fabric to be over here, because when I seam it together, I'm going to have to work that in. So I want both sides to be very smooth and to stay very smooth. trying to find a good stitch marker that'll show. I think the gold will show. So every, I would say 1.5 inches, 2 inches, I'm going to hook them together with my stitch marker. Okay. Now, again, this is right sides facing you. We've got it laid flat and the right sides are facing you. That's key for mattress stitch. We don't want to put right sides together. We don't want to put wrong sides together. We want it to lay flat with right sides facing up. Okay. And I'm just going to be working on this part over here that I had blocked, but you would do the same thing all the way down to the other end here. So, like I said, every couple of 1.5 inches, every couple of inches. All right. All right. Now, then you're going to need a darning needle. This is done with a darning needle and yarn. What yarn to use? I could absolutely use this yarn, which is what my sweater's made out of. It is a silk cotton blend, but here's why I decided I'm not going to use it. When you pull on this, it is kind of it's a single ply yarn, so it unravels very easily. And when I pull it, even not very hard, the fibers start to pull apart and come apart that way. And I'm sure you've used a yarn like that. What I don't want to have happen is as I'm seaming it, if it should get stuck or snagged and I have to pull on it for something like this to happen, because then I've got to take it all apart and redo it. So if you've got a yarn like this, that it's not that this yarn isn't strong, but if it should get stuck, I don't want that to happen. So since the mattress stitch is an invisible seam, I'm going to use, so you're never going to see it, I'm going to use a mercerized, this isn't even mercerized, this is Organicon, a cotton fingering weight yarn. This is just what I happened to grab quickly. And I wanted something that you could really see so that when I show the mattress stitch, you won't be able to see this once I seam it. You could use something a little thicker if you want to. It should be the same weight as the yarn you've worked with or smaller to get a nice even seam. What you don't want to have is a huge contrast. Like if I was using a super bulky yarn, I wouldn't want to use this to seam it. There's too much of a difference. So a DK worsted to a fingering, I feel like is just fine. And it's going to keep my stitches together. All right. So I'm going to cut a length of this. And, it's going to go back and forth. I would give yourself, the distance that you're going to go, about that distance plus half that distance. So 1.5 times your length. And you can use any darning needle you'd like, a tapestry needle. Just make sure it has a dull point. You don't want something sharp because you don't want to be splitting the yarn when you do this. You want a blunt, rounded tip on this. All right, now I'm going to turn it because I like to work this direction instead of working sideways. I like to work away from me. So I'm just going to rotate this. All right. All right, so this is here's my front panel, and this is where the beginning of my sleeve is going to attach. And here is the center of the shoulder, and then the rest of the sleeve goes down the back. All right. Let me roll this up so I don't have pieces everywhere. Okay. Let's give it a little bit of a zoom in. Okay, there we go. So why I think Tunisian is a great candidate for mattress stitch is that you have kind of naturally created grid lines here, because the key is to go from one side of your work to the other and match it up almost stitch for stitch. And that way your seams will come together this way. What you don't want to do is match a stitch here and a stitch here and a stitch here and a stitch here, because it's going to get all wonky. For a good invisible mattress stitch, you want to go from side to side, move up, side to side, move up, side to side, and move up, okay? And I think these little grid lines make it really easy to see where to go or make your choices. All right, so along our edge here, we have these like this row of chains that goes along the edge. You want to not go into those chains. We want to give ourselves a little bit of room. So I'm not going to go into the chains. I'm going to go into the first row of stitches just beyond the chains. Okay. I'm going to zoom in even more here so you can see how this. Okay. Now, when this sleeve gets folded over, this corner right here is going to be in the armpit. Okay. And then we'll have the other side of the armpit on the other side of the sleeve. I like to work everything towards the armpit and finish the armpit last. So instead of starting right here, I'm just going to leave myself a few stitches, maybe an inch worth, with some tail of yarn hanging this way that I can then mattress stitch this way once I get all my pieces together. Okay. So I'm going to skip these first few stitches, and then you have to make a choice, because I want to decide where I'm going to pick up my stitches, and I want that to be a continuous line all the way up on this piece and a continuous line all on this piece. So there we go. I'm going to take this marker out because that's basically where I want to start. Okay. So I'm going to avoid the chain stitches. I'm going to go in to my fabric, and here's one of this piece is going this way. Here were the vertical bars that we made going right here that we were making all of our Tunisian stitches into. So this is the end. And I want to pick up into one of the horizontal bars. Now, whatever I pick up on this side, if I pick up, let's say, 2 horizontal bars on this side, so like the end of that stitch, I'm going to pull it through, leaving enough tail down here to finish off that inch. On this side, I want to pick up roughly the equivalent. So on this side, because my stitches go a different direction, I can go underneath a vertical bar over here. So I'm going all the way through to the other side. Okay. And I'm using the tip of the needle to pull up roughly the same, so just before the next vertical bar, and pull it through, which is why you don't want a sharp tip, because I don't want to split the yarn, because the next step is critical for making a good mattress stitch. So I've gone up this side, I've gone over, I've come up this side. Now I have to go back to the original side. You have to go back into the same place that this yarn is coming out of. So I'm going to go back into the same hole, and then I'm going to pick up 2 more. Same true for this side now. Go back over here. I want to go into the same hole right there. And if I have split the yarn, this won't work. And I'm going to come up just before the next vertical bar. Now, you want to be pretty close. You don't have to be exact, but I feel like these bars give us a nice grid to work with. And I leave it loose. I'm not tightening anything yet. I'm going to go back and forth this way, going in the hole I came out of, pulling up another, back into the hole I came out of on this side, pulling up another, and let's do one more here and up. And here and up. Again, I'm not going into these edge stitches. I'm going right next to the edge stitches. And I'm being consistent about that all the way up. All right, now if I've done this right, if I hold on to this tail, kind of anchor it down with my finger, and I pull this yarn, it should kind of zip everything closed. If I have split the yarn or not gone into the exact same hole, it won't work. But it's pulling pretty smoothly. So really what I should be able to do, if I pull this top part, it should pull all the way through, straight through. And it is. You can't see the yarn at all. It just brings those two pieces together. I can see it right here just because I have to finish these stitches here. But once that comes together, you won't see it. And on the other side, it pulls a seam. You still can't see that blue yarn because it's in between these stitches. It almost acts like a shoelace or a zipper, the way it zips it together that way. Okay. So I do like 1.5 to 2 inches at a time. And I still have these pieces pinned together. What I don't want to have happen is have like a bulk of yarn here or a bulk of fabric here that I have to ease in. That's why I have it pinned so often. Okay. So now I want to go back and do a little bit more, but now I can no longer see the hole I need to go back into. So once you've done your tightening, and I recommend that you do it every couple inches, don't wait till the very end. Because if you've had a snag, you're gonna have to take the whole thing out. I'd rather take out a little bit if I've had a snag. So I'm just gonna loosen up the last stitch. And now I can see where I need to put my needle back into. Hole I went into. Same thing on this side. I can take out the stitch marker now. If you ever get any funny stitches, if it doesn't look like it's, like maybe my tension was a little off there, so it looks like I'm going underneath 3 bars there, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to go maybe one more and then I'm going to pull it together, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting any gapping of fabric here. If you get too far ahead on one side, it doesn't matter which one, then you're going to end up with something like this, and you know you've got to adjust how you do it, which is another reason I like to tighten as I go. Let's do one more. And there. Okay. So I'm just going to hold here, pull it. And by using a nice smooth yarn like this, that helps to pull it through. So what I'm looking for here is that I'm still meeting up. I don't have too much fabric on this side or too much fabric on this side. We're up to my next stitch marker, and it looks like it's doing okay. So let's zoom out so you can see it. That's the mattress stitch. It can be a little tedious. It can be a little time consuming, but I feel like you get an excellent result. Again, here's what the seam looks like on the other side. So it is not particularly bumpy, and it's only the edge, row of edge stitches from each side, so it's not bulky. It will be bulky if you were to go further in, because then all that extra fabric would be pulled to the seam. And then this would be a perfect candidate to get steam blocked once you're done, because that's going to help that lay nice and flat. Okay, so you're going to continue on all the way to the shoulder, down to the other end, and you're going to stop short. I'm going to put some stitch markers here because I want to demonstrate what the armhole is going to look like under the arm. And you're going to go all the way, probably until you've got about 1 inch left. Just like we skipped 1 inch to begin, we're going to leave 1 inch before we end. Show you what that looks like. Okay. So you'll have seamed your arm on, your sleeve on, excuse me, leaving about an inch here and about an inch here, okay? The next piece will be to mattress stitch the sleeve closed. And then we're going to do it the exact same way. We're going to flip the piece over. Okay. Let's raise this up a little. All right. So now I'm going to fold it in because again, I want to match, I want my right side facing me. So this is going to be the part that goes right here. You can see my seam underneath the arm. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. These were my increase markers. I'm going to start at the cuff. I'm going to pin all this together so it's nice and flat and it meets. I'm going to start at the cuff and work all the way up, leaving about an inch in the armhole, okay? So I'm going to put a stitch marker. We're going to pretend I got there. So this will get mattress stitched the exact same way. All the way up, leave about an inch. So right now I've got a gap here, I've got a gap here, I've got a gap here. The next part to be seamed are the side seams. So now we're going to take the body, and I do think this works well laying it flat on a table or a work surface. You could do it in your lap if you need to, but I do think it works better when you lay it flat. So here's my front panel, and here's my back piece of my body. I'm going to tidy that up. And I had done some, I had made it bigger on the back, on the lower part, and then did a little bit of decreasing as I went up. So mine's going to be at a little bit of an angle. So if I have to ease some kind of different shapes in together like that, I might put those stitch markers a little closer together. So I'll start here at the hem, and I'll pin, laying it maybe every inch and a half or so all the way up. Use your imagination. All the way up until I get to our mystical armhole here, our underarm hole. Okay. So it's all going to get seamed until right here. So lay it so you can see. All right, so this part right here, we're pretending all these things are seamed. All right, so this is where all of our corners are coming together into the armpit here. Here is here, and here. So now what I want to do is any like easing in I need to do, I want to do it as close to the center as I can. So remember, we still have yarn attached here because we left it. We have yarn attached here and we have yarn attached here. So I'm going to do a couple more stitches here, pulling it in closer. I'll do a couple more stitches here. I'll do a couple more stitches here, and I'll keep going around this way until I get right down to I have no stitches left. And that way I have eased in all of these corners together and hopefully made not too much of a mess, but any mess that I do have is hidden in the armpit because no one's going to be looking at your armpit. So you'll just ease it all in and it'll disappear into the armpit. Okay. Before you weave away your ends, try this on and make sure it's not too tight under the armpit. If it is too tight, there are certainly things you can do. You can ease it out, try it on, and try to get a sense of how much more room you need. You can absolutely 100% create a little bit of fabric to fill in here to make it a little bit wider here if you need to. And if you have that issue, give us a call or an email at the shop and I'll help you through that. Um, if it's too loose, you could here in the armpit where no one's going to see, you could take it back till you have those inches and you could go out a little further and bring in a little more fabric to the seam, which would bring it in a little tighter. So there are a couple adjustments you can do. Once you know that it fits well, then you can be done and you can weave away your ends. All right. So you'll do that for both sides. And then you'll have two great sleeves attached. The other piece I wanted to show you is if you decide you're going to decide you're going to add a pocket. The pocket's going to lay on top. You won't have right sides to butt up against each other. You're seaming something on top of the other. In this case, you do want to use your matching yarn, okay? Or something really, really close because odds are it's going to show a little bit. I think there's a couple of ways you could do it. I think you could pin it on and stitch it from the back side, in which case, and not come all the way through to the front, which would eliminate seeing any of the yarn. I could use my bright blue again. But I'm going to do kind of a modified mattress stitch onto the front here. And I'll show you how that works. I think I have about 12 darning needles rolling around here. Okay. So do make sure that it is, your pocket is blocked. And I believe she talks about, when she talks about the pocket, to, you do a slip stitch bind off as usual. I might recommend depending on how your edges look of your pocket, you could go around and do a slip stitch around the whole thing, which would give you nice even edges on which to sew your pocket on, okay? So it'll just kind of depend on how your pocket looks. Once you know where you want it, you'll pin it in place. And once you've got it on, decide where you want it. And, you can put a couple stitch markers to hold it. And we're going to pretend this is my top so I can seam against a straight edge. So if you've got edges that look like this, I would suggest going and adding a slip stitch across. And to do that, you could just you could do it before you finished your slip stitch bind off. You could just keep going around the side here. Flip a loop there and go into the next one. Pull through both loops. And do that all the way around. It'll give you this nice row of chains that we've talked about before that will be really nice to use to stitch it onto the body of your sweater. And then I could keep going around. So it gives me a nice edge there, a nice edge here. You could just go all the way around. Okay. That's good. Okay, so now I've got some nice edges, and it makes it a little firmer to seam with. And now we can seam on our pocket. So you can see what I'm doing. I am going to use the contrast yarn, but I think you're going to be able to see it, which means that you probably shouldn't be using a contrast yarn to do this method, but you'll see what I mean here. Okay, so we're going to pretend this is the top of our pocket. This is the bottom here. So you've got it pinned down. I would pin in the corners and one extra or a couple extra on the sides because you really don't want it to shift. The last thing you want is it to come out and be slightly askew. So get it all pinned into place. Ends woven in on that. And then I'm going to go, just kind of turning it so I can hold it better. I'm going to go into the 2 loops of my slip stitch that I just did. And I'm kind of lining it up with these vertical bars right here. So I'm going to make sure I'm going, keeping it nice and straight and seaming it to those vertical bars right there. It just makes it easier. Here. Now I don't want to just go under the vertical bar. That's not very sturdy. So I'm going to go all the way through to the other side and pick it up. Oh, didn't leave myself enough. All right. All right, so now this is going to end up being a little bit more like a whip stitch, I think. I think that's a better term for it. I'm going to come over here now. So I'm not going into the same hole. You can try that. Well, let's just try that. I'm going to go, I could split the chain stitch of the pocket. Just make sure you're going through all the layers. See my needles coming through there. Let's try a mattress stitch and see what happens. And then all the way over here. I don't want a pocket to fall off. Or for the stitches to come loose. Go back in the same hole, pull up. Let's see what happens when we do it this way. I've never mattress stitched this way. This will be an adventure. It's kind of not the definition of a mattress stitch. It's our own stitch. And if it doesn't work, we'll know. All right, I did a few here. Let me get my end pulled through. All right, so I'm going to hold my end. I'm going to give it a tug and let's see what happens. Doesn't pull quite as, hey, that's not bad. You actually you can't see it. And that's a pretty strong seam. I feel like it's pretty secure on there. And it kind of blends my stitches together. That's not bad at all. So that is possible to do it that way. All right. So you would go all around the 3 sides. When you get to the top of the corner, so actually I would start over here and work this way so you don't have less seams. But when you get to the top, I like pockets because I put stuff in pockets. So I'm probably going to make my pockets a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper, I should say. Currently hobbling around on crutches, and every time I put on something that doesn't have pockets, I'm kind of trapped. So when you get to the top corners where you're going to be sticking things in and pulling, this part right here, this little join is going to get a lot of wear. So let's pull that. Oh, you can see it a little bit right there. I don't think I went in the same hole. I do think if you go in the same hole, though, it works out pretty well. So I'm going to give it a little bit of reinforcement right here where the top of the pocket in this little corner. And I'm going to go in and out of those holes a couple of times. just because that part's going to get a lot of wear. And I don't want it to come undone. And that's where having your same color yarn would be very helpful there, because you're kind of going in and out of the same place a couple of times. So give those little reinforcements there at the top of each corner of your pocket. And I think you'll be good to go. So I'm going to finish mine up. Now that it's nice and chilly here, it's this perfect weather to wear this. So I'm anxious to get it finished, motivated to get it finished. And I will post a picture here when mine's all done. And I hope you'll share a picture of yours. I love to see how they're coming out. Everybody's looks so different with different yarns and different tensions, and it's just fabulous. It's been a great pattern. I hope you've enjoyed this. Stay tuned next year in 2025 for Project Monday. We're going to be doing a crocheted sweater club. We're going to take 6 months to make a pullover sweater, and then the second half of the year, 6 months to do a crocheted cardigan. So stay tuned on our website, aroundthetableyarns.com, for information about our Project Monday 2025. We will also be doing a Tunisian sampler club. So we'll be working on a sampler shawl over the course of the whole year, where you'll learn different stitches. You absolutely don't have to make a shawl. You can just come and learn the stitches, make a pillow, make coasters. You can do anything you want, but come and learn some different, and there are a lot of Tunisian stitches that you can learn. So if you've enjoyed this and want to learn more, stick with us. Again, all these classes are free, and hope you'll support us at Around the Table Yarns. Thanks. Bye-bye.